I didn't move to Pine Ridge for drama. Not after 30 years spent chasing down corporate fraudsters for the IRS, you know? I moved here for silence, for mornings that smell like cold rain and black coffee, where the only thing demanding attention is the sunrise. But on my very first week of retirement, a pristine white envelope showed up in my mailbox, demanding an absurd $140,000 from an HOA that, geographically speaking, didn't even exist out here. That was the exact moment I realized someone was trying to steal my peace and my land on nothing more than a piece of paper. I'd bought the place outright, 90 acres of pure, unfiltered East Texas quiet, a few miles past the last gas station where the asphalt finally gives up and the red dirt takes over. It was the kind of property you find not on Zillow, but by sitting with old men at the local diner. It took me 3 years of saving and 3 decades of working to afford it. No mortgage, no fine print, just clean, honest freedom. Or so I thought. The mailbox was this old, cast iron relic, paint flaking, numbers half gone. I walked down that morning with my coffee, expecting maybe a feed catalog. And there it was, the envelope, stiff, pure white, with bold red letters across the front. Urgent HOA notice. At first, I laughed out loud. Out here, the nearest subdivision, the preserve at Whispering Oaks, was miles away. The only community association I was worried about was the pack of coyotes. But the letter was real enough. Heavy paper, an embossed seal, and a tone dripping with polite, entitled authority. Dear property owner, it began. Our records show that your parcel, Lot 27B, falls under the jurisdiction of Whispering Oaks Estates Homeowners Association. Due to 30 years of unpaid dues, assessments, and penalties, your current balance is $140,097.33. Failure to remit payment may result in foreclosure. The number didn't even make sense. I bought this land clean, cash on the barrel, from a ranching family that had held the deed since the 1960s. I read every filing, every survey, every damn word. No liens, no encumbrances, nothing. Yet here was a ransom note dressed up in legal stationery, signed by a Cynthia Vance, president. I could almost hear her voice. You must have made a mistake. We're just collecting what's fair. I took a sip of coffee that suddenly tasted burnt and bitter. My 2 dogs, who never barked unless a storm was brewing, let out a low, uneasy rumble down the pasture. I set the cup down, went inside, and pulled out the old rotary phone I'd wired up for nostalgia. 3 rings, then a syrupy, rehearsed voice. Thank you for calling Whispering Oaks Estates HOA. Please leave a message for Cynthia or one of our esteemed board members. Have a blessed day. I hung up. Then I wrote my own letter. It was short, sharp, and notarized. I stated, in irrefutable language, that my property was not and had never been under any HOA jurisdiction. I attached a copy of my title deed, a screenshot from the official county boundary map showing their HOA stopped 1.5 miles south of my fence line, and even cited the state property code just for seasoning. I mailed it certified, return receipt requested. I thought, well, that'll be the end of it. They'll see the certified paperwork, realize they screwed up, and leave me alone to enjoy my retirement. But that's not how people like Cynthia Vance operate. They don't retreat. They escalate. 3 days later, another envelope arrived. Thicker this time. No return address, just a large red stamp that said, Final Notice. I tore it open at the kitchen table, the quiet fury already settling in my gut. Inside was a folded, color-printed map, fresh ink, crisp lines, smelling of toner and arrogance. At the top, updated boundary plan, Whispering Oaks Estates. Adopted 2018. I spread it out flat beneath the yellow kitchen light. The bright red outline of their community now stretched well past the last subdivision road, crawling north across open pasture, all the way into my ranch, right through my fence line. According to this fake map, my land now belonged to them. They hadn't filed a lien. They hadn't gone through the county. They'd just drawn a new border and hoped the guy on the receiving end wouldn't notice. That's when I walked to my study and spun the dial on my safe. Inside was a thick leather binder, filled with every document that mattered. The smell of old ink and carbon copy hit me like a memory. This was my proof. I laid it out next to their map, truth on one side, fiction on the other. You really picked the wrong man to lie to, I thought. I've spent 25 years chasing financial fraud. I learned that crooks hide in commas and live in the white space between words. That's where they think the rules stop matching. When I bought this ranch, I didn't trust anyone's summary. I went back through 60 years of county records, deeds, plat maps, mineral filings, every dusty microfilm that still existed. 3 decades of maps, and every single one told the same story. No association ever touched this land. I still remember the day I signed the closing papers. The title agent asked if I wanted extended HOA coverage. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. "Son," I said, "there's no HOA out here. Not unless the cows start holding board meetings." He chuckled, checked the box marked, "Not applicable." Now, months later, here I was staring at a forgery that said otherwise. I took a red marker and drew a clean line around my property, the real one, right across their counterfeit. Then I wrote in bold letters, "Not under HOA jurisdiction, ever." I scanned both pages, timestamped them, saved multiple copies, and uploaded them to cloud storage. Old habits die hard. You document everything before the liars start erasing. I knew right then this wasn't confusion. It was a setup, and the man they tried to bully with documents was about to show them he was better with paperwork than any of them. The next morning, I drove into town with that fake map riding shotgun. It still smelled like deceit. The East Fork County Records Office is the kind of place where the ceiling fan spins like it's tired of its job, and the air smells like paper, humidity, and time. I slid the fake map across the counter to a young clerk. "I need an official copy of whatever this is supposed to be." He squinted. "That doesn't look familiar." "That's because it's a forgery," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I spent 25 years at the IRS, son. I can smell fraud through 3 layers of toner." He nervously typed, then pulled up the real county map. The HOA boundary stopped 1.5 miles south, just as I remembered. "These don't match at all," he mumbled. "Check the metadata," I suggested. He clicked a drop-down menu. "Created 2018. Uploaded from Whispering Oaks SE Wi-Fi." He turned back, wide-eyed. That's the HOA's office network. And now it's a felony," I confirmed. Before I could process that, a rough, steady voice spoke from behind me. "Is that the parcel west of the preserve?" I turned. A man in his late 60s, sunburnt, denim shirt, boots that had seen 1,000 survey sites. He introduced himself as Howard Denton, retired county surveyor. I drew those lines myself, long before any HOA tried to play land baron. They tried annexing that section back in '05. Judge threw it out before lunch. I testified. "Mr. Denton," I asked, "is there any chance I signed an updated boundary after that?" He barked out a laugh. "Son, I'd rather lick a cattle gate in August than sign anything for that HOA." He glanced at the fake map and snorted. "That thing's a forgery. Wrong line weight, wrong seal placement. Amateurs." Without another word, he scribbled a statement on his old notepad, signed it, and stamped it. "Make sure the prosecutor sees this." Truth had just walked out with spurs on. The next thing I heard that morning wasn't the wind or the dogs. It was metal, a heavy clank. Hanging across my front gate was a brand new chain, thick enough to stop a truck, held tight by a silver padlock the size of a grapefruit. Bolted beside it, a shiny aluminum sign, "Property of Whispering Oaks Estates. Access restricted until debt resolved." I stood there for a long minute. They'd come out in the dark, drilled holes, and driven off like thieves pretending to be landlords. Pay or stay out. I called the sheriff's office. 45 minutes later, a deputy cruise pulled up. His tone was practiced calm, the kind that usually means he's already decided you're the problem. "What seems to be the issue, sir?" "The issue," I said, pointing, "is that somebody from the HOA trespassed onto my land and locked it shut." He squinted at the sign. "Are you sure this parcel isn't under their jurisdiction?" That hesitation told me everything. He knew them. "Deputy," I said quietly, "they trespassed. They drilled into my post. They're blocking access to private property. That's not civil. That's criminal interference." He sighed, the kind of sigh that ends conversations. "I'm not removing that chain, Mr. Jarrett. If you've got an issue, you'll need to take it to court." He turned and walked back to his SUV. "Fine. If the law wouldn't move for me, I'd move the law myself." I called a tow truck company out of Tyler. An hour later, a flatbed rumbled up. The driver, tattooed forearms, clipped the lock clean through with bolt cutters. The sound was crisp, final, like a verdict. Then he hooked the winch, leaned on the lever, and yanked the entire sign, bolts and all, right out of the ground. That afternoon, I went to work the way I used to prep a case file. 3 motion-triggered cameras, a solar-powered floodlight mounted above the post. If they came again, I'd have them from every angle. I filed a formal complaint with the county prosecutor's office. Photos, timestamps, Howard Denton's statement, the fake map, everything. I felt like bait. And I was fine with that, because I knew Cynthia would come back, and I wanted the cameras rolling. Sometime before dawn the first night, a motion sensor pinged. I checked the feed an hour later. The coffee went cold in my hand. There she was, Cynthia Vance. 5:48 a.m. Yoga pants, windbreaker, flashlight in hand, marching right up to my gate. She stopped where the chain used to hang, stared at the empty space for a few seconds. Then she looked straight at the camera, saw it, and gave it the finger. No words, just that slow, deliberate gesture that said, "I know you're watching, and I don't care." I smiled. That was the first moment she realized this wasn't going her way. But the real escalation came next. I woke up at 5 a.m. to the sound of tape ripping. Tires crunching gravel, retreating. On the gate post, a brown envelope. Notice to appear, East Fork County Civil Court. Defendant, Randall D. Jarrett. Hearing date, Friday, 7 a.m. Judge George Vance. I stood there staring at it, the name burning through my head. George Vance, Cynthia's ex-husband, a civil court judge, dead for 3 years from a heart attack. I'd read the obituary myself when I was digging into her background. This was a fake, a new low, even for her. I called the county clerk's office. I gave them the case number. The woman on the phone checked, clicked, and said, "Sir, that number doesn't correspond to any active or archived case in our system. And sir, Judge Vance passed away 3 years ago." "Yeah," I said. "That's what I thought." I hung up and started laughing, not out of humor, but because disbelief had run out of road and anger had taken the wheel. Now it wasn't just trespass or fraud. It was impersonation of a dead judge. In Texas, that's criminal forgery. I drove straight to the sheriff's department. The evidence officer took the document from me with latex gloves, logged it, and promised a forensic report. When it came back, it told me everything I already knew, but with proof. Fingerprints, Cynthia Vance. Inkjet pattern, Canon model registered to Whispering Oaks HOA office. They might as well have signed it in blood. I compiled everything. The video of her at the gate, the forgery analysis, the fake map, Denton's notarized statement, the whole case, Exhibit B through Z. The fear, the outrage, all replaced by a quiet certainty. She tried to forge reality itself, and that kind of arrogance always ends the same way, with someone like me flipping on the light. I called a lawyer, a friend of a friend in Tyler. "You need someone who doesn't scare easy," my friend said. "Call Maria Sanchez. She eats HOAs for breakfast." Maria picked up. Her voice was calm and measured. "Mr. Jarrett, I've reviewed what you emailed me. That's not civil harassment. That's a pattern of criminal conduct. You've got forgery, fraud, trespass, and obstruction of property rights at minimum." "I want it airtight," I said. "Then we start with injunctive relief, a court order stopping them from setting foot on your land again. After that, we attach fraud and harassment claims. And once the DA gets wind of that forged summons, we'll have leverage for criminal charges." I liked her already. The next day, Maria filed the motion. The court accepted it. Then she called again. "The prosecutor's office wants to meet you this afternoon. Assistant District Attorney Weaver will be handling the review." The ADA's office was utterly unimpressed by drama. Weaver was mid-40s, clean-cut, with the kind of eyes that measured people for truth. Maria laid the binder on his desk and began walking him through the evidence. The fake map, the gate chain, the video footage, and finally, the fake summons, the crown jewel. Weaver leaned back, rubbing his chin. Fake court documents, false claim of debt, tampering with county records. And she printed this from the HOA office printer. Maria nodded. He exhaled slowly. "Well, that makes it easy. I can open a criminal investigation today. We'll start with fraud, falsification of records, and criminal trespass. If the judge's name was used posthumously, we'll tack on identity misuse for good measure." As we left, Maria turned to me. "You realize, when this hits, she's going to panic. People like her always do." "Let her," I said. "Panic makes mistakes. Mistakes make evidence." Maria smiled the same cold, predatory one from the diner. "I can see why you worked in fraud, Mr. Jarrett. You think like a prosecutor." 2 days later, the Pine Ridge Unity Fair was held. Cynthia's damage control tour. She was going to stand in front of the people she'd conned and convince them she was still queen of the cul-de-sac. But she wasn't counting on me being there, or what I'd brought. Saturday morning came, warm and bright. I pulled up at 9:58 a.m., black zippered portfolio in one hand, a slim portable monitor in the other. Beside me, Maria Sanchez, carrying a single envelope, the kind only lawyers carry when the contents are heavier than they look. Cynthia was under a white canopy, wearing a cream blazer and the expression of someone running for re-election to a throne no one asked for. When she saw me, her smile froze for a heartbeat. "Mr. Jarrett," she said brightly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "So glad you could join us." "Don't worry," I said. "I won't stay long." The fair kicked off with speeches. Then came open concerns. Cynthia smiled toward the crowd. "If anyone wishes to speak, please remember to keep remarks brief and constructive." I raised my hand. Her smile faltered. Maria stepped forward and said flatly, "Under Texas Open Assembly law, any community meeting publicly advertised is open to attendees regardless of jurisdiction." I stepped up beside her, set my monitor on the table, and plugged it in. "Let's keep it brief," I said. I brought pictures. The screen flickered to life. First slide, timeline of HOA fraud and property interference. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "This," I said, pointing, "is the official county boundary map, filed, stamped. This," I tapped the next image, "is the one your president uploaded in 2018. Same coordinates, different lines, no authorization. Metadata shows it was uploaded using the HOA office Wi-Fi." A woman in the crowd whispered, "Good Lord." I clicked again. The next slide showed the forged court summons beside a newspaper obituary for Judge George Vance. "The man who supposedly signed this notice has been dead 3 years. Gasps. Someone muttered. "She didn't." Cynthia stepped forward, voice tight. "This isn't the proper forum for." "Then here's a better one," I said. I clicked again, video playback. Cynthia at my gate. 5:48 a.m., giving the camera the finger. The crowd went dead silent. "The same morning she left a forged court notice on my fence," I said quietly. "Fingerprints confirmed. Inkjet trace confirmed. That's not rumor. That's record." Cynthia's smile disintegrated. Maria stepped forward, calm as a glacier. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client's evidence has been filed with both the county prosecutor and the district attorney. Criminal proceedings are pending. You'll be hearing from the state soon." The crowd shifted, murmurs building into shouts. "Is that why my dues went up? You fined me for a mailbox. You forged maps." Cynthia raised her hands, pleading. "Everyone, please. This is misinformation. I can explain." "Then explain this," someone called, holding up their phone, recording. "Go ahead, President Vance. Tell us why you used a dead judge's name." She just stood there, trembling, pale, trapped in her own theater. I shut the monitor off, closed the case, and said softly, "This isn't about me anymore. It's about everyone you scared into paying what you never earned." Then I walked out, the shouts behind me rising into a roar. The board called a special meeting the following Thursday. 6 p.m. Cynthia needed one last stage. When she took the microphone, her voice quivered. "Before we begin, I'd like to address some recent accusations. Much of what was presented was misinformation, misinterpreted, or fabricated altogether." Then the door at the back opened. 2 deputies stepped in. Assistant District Attorney Weaver walked between them. He didn't look left or right. "Cynthia Livingston," he said, voice level and unhurried. "You are under arrest for fraud, filing false legal documents, tampering with public records, obstruction of property rights, and criminal trespass." The room inhaled as one. Cynthia laughed, a high, brittle sound. "You're kidding. This is harassment. I built this community." The click of handcuffs cut her off. Weaver waited for the noise to die, then handed a folder to one of the remaining board members. "You'll find in here copies of the evidence submitted by Mr. Jarrett. An authorization for immediate administrative audit of your organization." Cynthia twisted in the deputy's grip. "You don't understand," she shouted. "I own this land. I made this place." Weaver didn't even look at her. He simply said, "No, ma'am. That's exactly the problem." They walked her out. For a long moment, the room stayed silent. Then the clapping started, slow, deliberate, rising until the whole room was on its feet. Maria looked at me, smiling just enough. Well, she said softly. That escalated efficiently. It's quieter, I said. The satisfaction wasn't triumph, just a deep, quiet certainty that justice had finally caught up to arrogance. 6 months later, the final hearing took place. The court found that Whispering Oaks Estates HOA acted with gross misconduct and fraudulent intent. Its charter was revoked. Its accounts were frozen. All assets were to be liquidated and used to restitute the 37 affected residents in full. Total damages topped $3.1 million. The gavel came down once, solid, final. I bought the old HOA office building in the final liquidation auction. No one else wanted the stucco box with the bad history. I gutted it, painted the walls a soft sage green, and opened the doors under a new name, the Jarrett Center for Rural Property Rights. It's 3 rooms, one for legal workshops on land use and ownership, one for free consultations with volunteer attorneys, and one room filled with archived maps and records that anyone can access. No red tape, no gatekeepers. The place has a heartbeat now, not bureaucracy, but community. The metal plaque by the door gleams in the sunlight, and it reads, "This land is not ruled by fear, fake maps, or forged threats. This land is free." Sometimes, when the sun goes down and the light hits the gate just right, I still see the reflection of that old chain, the one they used to lock me out of my own land. And every time I see it, I remember what my father used to say, "A man's boundaries are only as strong as his backbone." I figure the same goes for a country and for a community. It only takes one person to draw the line and say no. Tell me, what's the most outrageous HOA power trip you've ever witnessed? And do you think the system made it too easy for Cynthia to get away with it for so long? Drop a comment below, hit the like button if you agree that documentation is the best defense, and subscribe for more stories about fighting the good fight.